Behind me is my 1/4 acre no-till deep compost mulch market garden. I use about 40 yards of compost a year on that market garden, and this year I started my own on-farm composting operation. So in this video, I'm going to show you my on-farm composting operation, which is kind of behind the garden over there in that tree line. So I'll take you back there, show you the whole operation. And then I'm also going to show you in this video how I composted a whole deer in 3 weeks over the winter. That compost pile heated up to 165 degrees, stayed there for 3 weeks. And when I went to turn the pile, the deer was gone. So I'm going to show you how we did that. I'm going to show you the composting operation, how we make a compost pile. Hey, what's up everybody? I'm Chef Mikey. Welcome back to Chef's Harvest Farm. I'm a former executive chef turned urban farmer. But right here, this is my carbon source. So I get wood chips delivered here I get them from chipdrop.com typically, and tree services just drop them off here. And up here is like the front of my house, so I just have the dump trucks kind of come here. They dump me the wood chips here, then I get my compost deliveries over here for when I do need to use block compost. My goal now is to start making all my own compost. It might take me a while before I actually get to a point where I can make all my own compost, but for now I've started my composting operation, and I'm still buying a little bit of compost here or there, mixing it together. So I've got my tractor back here, and then I've made like a little road that goes back there to the composting operation. And then I use my tractor to fill the wheelbarrows full of compost, so we're not doing it with a shovel. And then I use the tractor to get the wood chips back to the composting area to form the compost piles. So come on, let's go. I'll show you the composting operation, what we're getting into today. So this is kind of the beginning of my little composting operation. And this like little long line right here, we just been dumping garden scraps right here for the last few weeks. So I'm gonna scoop all this stuff up with my tractor today, mix it with wood chips. So it's about 50% wood chips, 50% garden scraps. And then I'm gonna form a big pile, and then I'm gonna coat the whole thing and just dump wood chips on top of it. So the whole thing's coated in wood chips. I'll probably let it sit there for like a week or two, and then I'll turn the pile. And I got some more aged compost piles down here, so I'll show you those, and I'll show you the next steps on those piles. So I've got the oldest pile over here, you can see, and that's the one that has the deer in it. So this winter, a deer got caught in my electric fence, and I just like scooped that deer up with my tractor. I made a big pile of wood chips right here, and then I just buried the deer in the pile of wood chips with like 2 yards of the oyster mushroom blocks, and then I just stuck a thermometer in it, you know, made kind of like a big 10-foot tall pile. And that thermometer, that thing got up to 165 degrees. It stayed there for 3 weeks, and then I was scared to turn it. I went to turn it 3 weeks later. I thought it was like gonna stink like flesh, like rotting, like a rotting body, you know. And granted, this is the middle of winter, so that thing stayed 165 degrees for 3 weeks. And then I went to turn it, and steam just went everywhere. You know, it's cold out. It's like 40 degrees that day. I mean, I turned the compost pile, and there was I did not find a single bone. There was no carcass left. The only things I saw were a few patches of hair here and there. So I turned that compost pile and let it sit, and then I built kind of like a windrow with it, and it's just been sitting there now for like 6 months. So today we're gonna take that, and we're gonna move everything this way. Here, I'll show you. So this little like windrow that I built right here is that compost pile that had the deer in it. So it's kind of really shrunk. It was kind of like 10 feet tall at one point, and now it's just kind of this tall now. So I'm gonna scoop the whole thing up, put it in one big pile, and let it cure there for another like 2 months or so. And then hopefully we'll be able to use that like going into our fall crop. We'll reform the pile. That'll kind of like smother all those weeds that are kind of growing on top of it. We'll take care of those, nip those in the bud, and then we'll let this pile just one final cure. And then all the stuff here that I showed you, we're just gonna move it down this way. So we'll have about 3 piles. We'll have this one that's gonna be ready to use, which is probably about 15 yards of compost, might be 10 yards by the time it's done. And then we'll form all this into another pile and get that curing. So we'll probably have another 10 yards of compost to use a few months after this one is done. And then I've got about another 20 yards of wood chips over there. So I'm gonna use some of that to help form this compost pile. And then I've been talking to my friend Josiah, who owns a mushroom farm, about trying to figure out how we can get some more of those mushroom blocks over here, start another compost pile. So this compost pile it's got the deer in it, and it's got the fungal activity from the mushroom block. So I'm super excited to use it, see what kind of outcome we get from it. The whole composting operation is new to me. I haven't actually used any of this compost yet, so we're moving towards that, you know, still trying to like work on perfect recipe and ingredients and things like that. And you know, I got a feeling it's not going to be like the manure based compost that I purchased, but you know, I might be able to amend this and get the fertility right. Or sometimes I'm thinking, you know, I might mix this is going to be good because it's got microbes from my own property here, and then mix that with some of the other compost together. Just gives it more diversity in the soil, and that's what you really want. So I'm thinking I might kind of do that, still purchase a little bit of compost, make my own compost, mix the two together to get enough compost that I need, kind of supplement the cost a little bit, as well as bring in microbes from my own local area and create more diversity in the soil. So I'm gonna hop on my tractor, we're gonna get this all squared away, get everything moved, and get the compost piles made, and I'll show you what it looks like after. All right, y'all, so it's been a couple of days. I get distracted easy. I got this compost pile moved and turned the other day, so now I'm gonna move and turn the rest of them. All right, so I got this pile all moved here. It's interesting, you can see how the paper chains don't actually break down very well in the compost pile like you might assume that they would. So I got this moved the best that I could. Now there's like a little bit of pile of it still over here. I'm just gonna kind of leave that there. That kind of inoculates the new pile. So every time I move it, you know, there's always a little bit of the old pile left, and I kind of like that. You know, I do it kind of on purpose, and then I'll just kind of move that in to make it like a bed for me to build my new pile on top of. And then that's gonna like inoculate the new pile, right? So it's got like more diversity, the more broken down microbes that will inoculate the rest of the pile, and those microbes will interact with the microbes over here and a little bit out of this compost pile. So you get all the different levels of diversity of microorganisms in your pile is the goal, right? The most diversity possible. So that's why I use some of the older piles and always kind of inoculate, so they all have a little bit of the older stuff and the newest stuff. So now I'm going to build the new pile with all the scraps from the garden from like yesterday, today. We pulled out a shit ton of tomato plants and all kinds of stuff, right? It's kind of like getting towards the end of the summer, so like the whole garden's gonna get pulled out. All these tomato plants, eggplants, we're gonna be putting in a pile. So we're just gonna build a big pile right now, and then probably we'll build up garden scraps for another 3 or 4 weeks, and then we're going to build another big pile, and then we'll move everything this way, and then hopefully soon the finished pile over here will be ready, and we'll be able to use that on the garden. All right, y'all, so you can see how I just kind of layered it, right? So the first layer was the half broken down stuff, and then I coated that with a layer of wood chips. And then my next layer was my green material, so that it's like sandwiched in between the wood chips. And then, you know, the wood chips kind of fall down in there as everything breaks down, and that green material is just gonna go like this. And then I just covered the whole pile in wood chips, so it's encapsulated with wood chips. And then that just kind of traps in all the heat. It keeps all the bugs and critters out, so you're not gonna get flies all over the pile when it's coated in wood chips like this. So I've got this big long thermometer. It's about 2.5 feet long, and it'll read the temperature of the compost pile. So I'm gonna stick this right in here. It generally takes about 3 days to get up to temperature, I find. So we'll come back, check this 2 or 3 days. I'll probably just let this go for like a week or two whenever I get time. Could be 3 weeks, and then we'll turn it. But the way it works basically is your carbon material, which for me is wood chips. Some people use hay, straw, those types of things. Any type of like brown woody material is going to be like a carbon source. And then the microorganisms in your nitrogen source are going to break down the carbon. And that's just kind of the way it works, right? And the heat is created from all the little microorganisms in there moving around like a lot of people in a little room, right? It get really hot with all the people in there. There's so many microorganisms inside here moving around, chewing, munching on everything, that it heats the pile up. And then at that point, it'll kind of start to cool down after several, I don't know, in my experience, sometimes weeks, like a few weeks, and then it'll start to cool down. And then at that point, you can turn it again. The outside becomes the middle becomes the top, the bottom ends up on the top, right? And then the whole process kind of starts over. So these wood chips on the outside, all the nitrogen and microorganisms that we'll put on top of it when we turn it. We'll end up chewing all those up, and then we'll turn it again, right? And at the same time, we're incorporating air in there because all these microorganisms need air to survive. If we don't turn it and put air in it, it'll go anaerobic, and basically they'll lose oxygen and won't be able to breathe. It's when things get like slimy, basically, on that like smelly smell. This compost won't ever smell bad because I keep it aerated. If you don't keep it aerated, that's when it gets that smelly, slimy smell. That's how we build a brand new compost pile. I'll show you the broken down stuff over here, what that looks like. And so this is my like nice, like mostly broken down stuff. You can see that's like looking like pretty nice compost. This is what has the deer in it. But you know, there's like chunks in it, like not broken down wood chips. So I mean, it's pretty mulchy still. But you know, it kind of like goes together good, like, right? That's like nice. It rained, it's been raining all day, so it's like super wet right now. But yeah, I mean, definitely chunky. Well, wood chips. I'd like to screen it, so we'll probably figure out a way to screen it before we actually use it in the garden. So that's gonna be the next step, figure out how to screen this, and then we'll come back and we'll turn this pile over here. So I mean, we're just under 150, so you know, right in the red is good. That means your pile's hot. That's hot enough to kill any weed seeds, any bacterias or harmful pathogens that you don't want in your compost. So you want to heat it up to kill all those pathogens and weed seeds. And you know, so I'm probably just going to take all this green material that we accumulated from today's chores, just throw that on the top, cover the whole thing with wood chips again, then we'll just start our green pile over here, and then the whole system just keeps moving this way. Right, so this will be our most finished pile. You can see I just kind of took a scoop out of that to inoculate the fresh pile, so there's some of this in that, right? And that's just kind of how the whole system works, and it's just a work in progress, and I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, y'all.